Good day to you. This is going to be a movie review episode, or whatever you want to call it. Um, and the movie I'm going to review in a moment is a movie that I saw on Wednesday. But before I get to that, I'm going to talk about another movie. So, let me fix my screen. Okay. So the other day I was on Amazon Prime, and I was looking at trying to find some movies, trying to find something to watch, and I came across this one, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie. It came out in 1995. Now, if you're doing the math, that's 30 years ago. 30 years ago, this movie came out. And so I decided, let's watch it. Let's see what it looks like to my almost 43-year-old sentimentalities. And my thought when I got done watching it was, if you ever wonder if your parents love you, remember that they sat through movies like this with you. All right? So that's my thought, is like, my mom sat through this movie with me at a movie theater up in Moorhead, Minnesota. And I was 13 years old. And watching it back now, it's just not good. It's not even good compared to the TV show. All right. This is like early CGI, and we're talking early CGI on a major budget. And it looked so bad when they brought out the Zords and everything. So I want you to understand that this is not actually the movie I'm going to review. I wanted to bring this up because this was a movie it's a nostalgia movie. It's a movie that brings you back to a certain stage in your life. I remember when I was a kid, my friend who lived up, my dad was pretty big about, you didn't watch TV on school mornings, but Power Rangers was on TV in the mornings, and I had a friend upstairs who his parents did let him watch Mighty Morphin Power Rangers on TV, and so almost every morning I went up to their apartment. And we sat there and we hung out and we watched Power Rangers until we had to go to school. And I watched this show, and so this is kind of part of that age. And when I rewatch this, the thing I can't help but notice, for one, is the costumes are worse than the show. Even the Zords are worse than the TV series. But the only thing that probably really appealed to me in my 13-year-old sentimentalities, actually I wasn't even 13 yet, the only thing that really appealed to me was, one, I'll admit it actually has some pretty good music scattered throughout the movie, and secondly is my hormones were kicking in, and I thought Kimberly was attractive, and so and so was the lady that they run into on that mystery island or whatever. So that kind of played a little bit of a role into probably my appeal to the movie. But really, there's nothing else appealing. But again, I bring this up because just because something is nostalgic doesn't mean it's still good. And so talk about going back and revisiting movies. So this came out 35 years ago, right? Or 30 years ago. 35 years ago was this movie. And this is the one that I saw in theaters on Wednesday. And they have a big release right now. And apparently they've extended the release another week. And so it is... it came out in 1990. I was 7 years old when I saw this movie. And I went to see it in theaters. And I loved it when I saw it in theaters. But again, I was 7 years old. What a 7-year-old's going to like is not going to be what an almost 43-year-old's going to like. And so I went to see this movie in the theaters. And granted, it's not by far not the first time I've seen it since 1990, but it is the first time I've seen it in theaters since 1990. And so I was kind of watching this movie, and the thing that still stands out to me is, unlike Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, this movie actually still holds up. I look at here like 44% Rotten Tomato score, and I did look at some of the reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and I know there's some people that got really annoyed by the product placement. Yes, there's product placement in that movie, and it's not hard to figure out reason why. If you read the production, the history on the production on this film, they had a very tight budget, and they had to find ways to make money, to make it possible for this movie to be made. So I was reading into the history of it. Apparently, so Howard the Duck had come out a few years earlier, directed by George Lucas, and it's considered one of the worst movies of all time. And so almost every studio was terrified of taking Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, expecting a Howard the Duck situation. And so they were very resistant to it. And so this is actually this is actually considered an independent film. They had a distributor, which was New Line Cinema, but it was actually technically an independent film. And they had to figure out ways to make money. And yes, did they do product placement? Like, you have that little moment where you see a Burger King in there. And when it came to the pizza, I was reading some reviews. People are mad that they're using Domino's. I'm like, everybody knows the Turtles are pizza eaters. And so if you're going to try to cut down on your budget, to reduce your budget, why don't you have a pizza company do it? It's just logical. It's smart from a production standpoint. Is it marketing? Sure, fine. But they need that in order to make the movie. So the thing that I like, I'm watching the movie is, almost from the basically from the first shot, it gets you. Even as an adult, because you're watching it, it's got the 90s movie grind and grit, that filter, and it just kind of, and it has this like mysterious music going through. And I realized the composer, if you actually listen to the music, the composer in this movie, let me quick look up what his name was. Okay, I looked it up. His name was John Du Perez. So John Du Perez, if you listen to the music, I think he only uses like maybe 2 or 3 instruments the entire movie, and that's basically a keyboard. We're talking like one of those electrical keyboards are really common in the 80s and the 90s, because you could I kind of realized that the drum beats that you're hearing are not actual drums, but they're probably coming from a keyboard. I think I heard I think there was an acoustic guitar at one point, and I think an electric guitar. That's basically all I heard from instrumentation in this film. And I'm pretty certain it's the same guy playing all of these instruments. And so, and the thing is, the music, it does a really good job of gathering a vibe when things are kind of mysterious. When you got kind of the Japanese martial arts vibe, he captures that. When you're dealing with the villain, he captures that. He captures the jovialness, the fun, the playfulness, of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And so again, going back to the very first scene, you have that grit, that 90s filter, and you just feel like this is a difficult time. And you combine that with the overspeak of April O'Neil's news press, and she's talking about the crime wave that's hit the city. And understand, this was pretty relevant in the time, because if you go look up the data for the crime rate for New York City from 1988 to 1992 was the highest crime rate in the history of the city, as far as I could find. I think the statistics I looked at went back to, I think, like 1945 or something like that. There's one year in the 70s that got close to it, but otherwise the highest crime years were those four. I mean, the crime rate in New York City now is nothing compared to what it was in the 90s. And so this felt very relevant. You're watching this, and you're dealing with a city that is worried about its crime. And it kind of, I imagine if you're a New York person, it's taking you out imagining what if there was these mysterious people that could make our city feel a little bit safer. And I know there's theories and ideas as to what caused the rise in crime. And by the way, it was a nationwide problem. It wasn't just a New York City thing. It was all across the country. It was a problem of crime. So you get to the characters, and they use puppets. Jim Henson, I believe it was actually Jim Henson's last film that he did, and so that gives it a certain level of significance. Jim Henson was pretty much the legend when it comes to puppeteering, and again, there's a few moments where it's kind of weird, especially there's the infamous moment with Donatello. I'm not going to tell you what it is because it's otherwise it'll ruin that scene for you forever, especially because it's supposed to be a serious scene. But otherwise, they do. It has a good look. April O'Neil, I think, is the actress of April O'Neil and the actress for. Let's see what's. Let me just scroll down. Look at her name. So her name is Judith Hoag. And then the actor Casey Jones, Elias Koteas, both of them I thought were good. They're good actors. They had good chemistry with one another. I'm pretty certain that a lot of what they did with that was because they are very aware that there's going to be a lot of kids that are going to be going to this movie, and they're also very aware that their parents are going to be dragging them to it. And so they have this little romance, this little chemistry thing. Is it perfect? Is it better? Sure. But I think it works. It gives something for the parents to attach to. And April O'Neil was important to be the fish out of water type person to help people connect with these turtles. I even noticed something with the way they use the accents. If you watch throughout it, pretty much every character in the show, in the movie, with a couple exceptions, they're using a New York accent. And I thought that was really interesting. And that's why there's some points where I have troubles hearing the person because they're doing a good job with that accent. The exceptions to this rule was Shredder, Master, gotta see what his name was. Master Tatsu. So Master Tatsu and Shredder, and then and Splinter, and they have kind of more of a Japanese type vocal, which makes sense because they came from Japan. The Turtles and April O'Neil do not have, as far as I could tell, they did not have a New York accent. And the reason April wouldn't is because she is a newscaster. She can't. Usually newscasters try to use vocals that are more common. They try to soften or hold back their accent. And the Turtles, because they're growing up in the sewer, and that means they haven't had no real relationships with anyone but each other, that means they may have learned how to talk from television. And so it makes sense that they wouldn't have an accent. And so again, those are kind of neat details. The relationships between the turtles, they're you can tell that Leonardo basically is functioning like the oldest, because I don't know if anybody's ever looked if there's any determination on the age of these turtles. They might be the same age because that's the way turtles are. A lot of times they're born multiple at one time. So, but the way they're relating to one another, Leonardo is pretty much functioning like an oldest child. Raphael's functioning like the second oldest child, which is why they tend to butt heads with each other. And then Michelangelo and Donatello are the two youngest, and I think Michelangelo would probably be the youngest, because just given his comedic nature, and he tends to avoid conflict because he's been surrounded with it for so much of his life. He tends to avoid it, and so does Donatello, because you kind of get the vibe that Raphael and Leonardo, they're fighting, has been it's pretty much a lifelong thing, and both of them know to go away. And Michelangelo, again, they played good with these character points where like Michelangelo will avoid awkward conversations. Like when he's sitting with Donatello, and Donatello's talking about like, have you ever thought about it? What if Splinter wasn't with us anymore? Michelangelo switched the conversation really quickly, and it's because it's an avoidance, which is where if they're going to do the Last Ronin, if they're going to do a film of that, I really hope they do, because it's because I think the way and I hope that if they do it, they would bounce off of this version, because the way Michelangelo was written in this, he is very much actually pretty well set up for a Last Ronin type story. But anyways, like I said, there's so many little details like that, and even like one of my friends, he went with me. Him and his family, they'd also gone to the movie on Wednesday night, and he brought up the detail about that I never noticed was about Michelangelo's fighting ability, which also would lend in to Last Ronin. I never noticed that he was blindfolded during the combat training, and that he was basically beating all of them while blindfolded. And so, like I said, there's all these little great details. But the thing that really stands out in this movie is, is there any message here? And again, when I was reading the reviews from the critics, and most of the critics' reviews you're looking at came out from 1990, and I wonder if they review it differently now. But a lot of them were very cynical and saying, what's the message here? I think there actually was a pretty good message here. There's definitely a message to talk about anger. I mean, this is so... Mutant Mayhem, which came out 2 years ago, I think it was, an animated film. That one, I mean, I enjoyed it, but I don't think it had the emotional depth. And one of those moments where you see emotional depth is when Raphael comes back from this movie, and he talks with, and he has this moment where he is he comes back angry, and then he has this very heartwarming talk from Splinter, and that Splinter's not present in the Mutant Mayhem film. Again, I enjoyed the film, and I didn't mind a lot of the changes, but that Splinter wasn't there. That heartwarming moment where he's giving him this moment of wisdom. You have to control your anger. The message that he's given to Raphael. And his isolationism. And so, and he's addressing this thing. And you can see this at times where the brothers are together and they're listening, but he's standing off a little. I mean, there's these little details. But the plot of the Shredder is actually kind of an insidious plot. Because you're talking about the teenagers at this time. We're talking about Generation X teenagers. We're talking about the heart of Gen X. And it just bleeds Gen X culture as you're watching it. And one of the defining things of Gen X was they were the latchkey kids. They were the kids that were quite often left at home, and they're given the keys, and their parents went to work, because we were at a point no longer where only one parent could work. So both parents had to work, and so the kids would quite often come home to an empty house or an empty apartment or whatever. That's why they're called the latchkey kids, and to some degree that did create relationship tensions between parents and kids, and so they kind of play into this. Where kids, the extreme end, they feel like they're detached. Their parents don't love them. And so meanwhile, there's this guy. he's got all this treasures and all this money, these games, these you could food, do whatever you want. This he's giving you everything. It's kind of the from a biblical standpoint, it's like, look, here's the kingdom. You can have a piece of it. Just join me. Basically, Shredder's playing a Satan type role, but but on a even more grounded level, it is a classic cult. That is what's going on. He's using the cult strategies, and this is what street gangs do. Street gangs, quite often, they will use the cult-like tendencies. They have somebody who's very charismatic. He convinces people to buy in to his mission and his agenda, and then there's this point. He says, "You are here because the outside world has rejected you. This is your family. I am your father." So he's telling them, you feel like you don't belong. Here's a place for you to belong. And you're seeing manipulation. But you realize there's points here and there you realize he doesn't care about them. He only cares what they can give him. It's all about him, all about his empire. Whereas, a family exists not... The goal of a family is, you see with what's going on, you see even though they're not related, actually. They're literally a different species. Though they're not related by blood, you see what family is supposed to look like with Splinter and the Turtles. They fight each other, but they come back together and they hug and they hug it out. They love each other. There's no, and it's not like, I would have done this if it wasn't for you. It was, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did this. And that's more family. It's broken at times, but you love each other no matter what, and you seek the best for your family. Your family doesn't exist to serve you. You exist to serve your family. Especially if you're the head, if you're the father, it's not there to serve you. It's not to glorify you, not to make you look better. Every father, every parent, their goal should be that their children may have good lives. And again, you could see that. So like I said, it is a wonderful message on family. It's a warning against the falling into the wrong people, to cult leaders. And honestly, as churches, we need to be mindful about how we talk. And understand that the church isn't like, this is your family, and what you do at home is not your family. It's like, no, this is family. Yes, we are brothers and sisters in Christ. And sometimes the pastor can be called a spiritual father. The Apostle Paul talks like that in 1 Corinthians chapter 4. But ultimately, the real father is the Heavenly Father. And your parents, you have your own fathers. But the thing is, the church is not supposed to exist as a replacement for the family you have at home. Rather, it should be seen as an extension of that family at home. And the church should be supporting and seeking the strengthening of it. If you have a kid come into your youth group and they have a strained relationship with their parents, as a pastor, your job, you shouldn't be like, well, your hope should be, you should be praying and hoping for that kid, that teenager, that they would have, that the relationship with their parents would be restored, that would be strengthened, because you want them to have a good relationship with their parents. And when I see, and when it, the last thing you want is kids estranged from their parents, assuming they have good parents. You should, I mean, they should be constantly going like, so have you been talking to your mom? Have you been talking to your dad? You know, and a lot of time, if you want to find a cult leader, they don't want you to have a strong relationship with your parents. Because if you have a strong relationship with your parents, then that might expose the cult leader. It might lose his power. So, like I said, it's a. There are a few things that I think probably could have been better. Um, I feel like the whole thing with April losing her house, her apartment, and her that antique store, which she said that she kept because of her father. Um, that kind of got glossed over. I don't know if that's something they were hoping to do with the second movie, but the studio got overly involved or what. But that wasn't touched on. The fact that the Danny is the one who sent the Foot to burn that down, that's a plot point that'd been really interesting to investigate and to explore. Maybe again, maybe you don't explore it in this movie; you would explore it in the second movie. And a lot of that didn't get explored because, um, simply put, so the critics of this movie got really mad about money grabbing. I honestly don't think the money grabbing was there. Honestly, when you watch the movie, they're focused on the story. They're focused on a plot, and I think it's a good plot. And I think honestly, what the Shredders do, the Shredders plot, the setup for everything, it is actually it is a very well thought out script as you look through it. I mean, yes, there are product placement, but a lot of that is just so they can finance the movie, so they can afford it. If they don't have those product placements, I don't think the movie happens. And so, but I believe the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2 was very, very much a money grab because it only took a year for the movie to come out. And I mean, literally, it's 1 year and 2 days that it was released. That's not enough time. There was people complaining about this one being too dark and too violent. And honestly, I think, like I was a 7-year-old. I think I survived okay. But and then so the next movie was all bright and cheery. It's supposed to happen like a week after the first movie. I mean, there's not much time that's supposed to pass between the first and second movie, and so they honestly they act as if nothing happened in the first movie, and so they had a different April O'Neil actress. They didn't have Casey Jones. Um, they didn't have her boss and his Danny. I mean, there's so much that's missing, and that's why I struggle to watch the second movie, and I know they're gonna have a 35th anniversary next year for it, and that's because this one's doing really well. $3.3 million it's made this week, which is impressive given the fact I had to drive an hour and a half to go see it because the closest theaters that were showing it last week are an hour to an hour and a half away, and yet it made $3.3 million. And a lot of the theaters weren't even showing it every day. So like the one I went to on Wednesday, they only showed 2 days this week. They only showed it on Sunday and Wednesday, and still $3.3 million, which is impressive. So that's why they're already jumping the gun to go do the second movie. Do a re-release of the second movie for its 35th anniversary. And will I see it? I don't know. I might. But the movie, it's the decline in quality from the first to the second movie is very sizable, because when I read the making of it, they rushed it because they saw dollar signs, and so that one was a money grab. And the thing is the irony is the one that was the money grab did worse, because notice, even adjusted for inflation, it made $211 million domestically. This one, adjusted for inflation, I don't think it was a money grab. 362,525,000. And note, budget 13.5 million, which it's actually um, quite a bit. This one was 25 million, and I mean they had a very similar opening weekend, but the drop off was very quick because the quality of this one was so much lower than the first one. So there you go. That's my review, my analysis of this film. It was one of my favorite films growing up. I don't know if it's amongst my. I don't know where it would rank nowadays. Um, but honestly, I think it's possibly one of the best. I'd say it's possibly top 25 best superhero movies ever made. Maybe even higher than that. Honestly, prior to the big renaissance that came for the Marvel Cinematic Universe, prior to that happening, I would say it's probably even top five. But uh, it's like I said, it is still a good movie, even for an adult to watch. And honestly, as an adult, there's stuff you catch that you didn't catch before. I mean, just a little thing when they get back to um, the sewer and they return home, and they get to this pizza, and just a little thing that you don't really understand as a kid. And they said, yeah, there's a pizza I had a couple days ago, and I think Donatello opens it up and he says, "Do you like penicillin on your pizza?" When I was a kid, I didn't know what penicillin was. I figured it was just some medicine. Well, now as an adult, I know penicillin's made from mold. So it was moldy pizza, and they got excited about it. So my thought now, as an adult, I hear that, and my thought's like, "Ugh, that's gross." As a kid, you're oblivious to what's going on, and there's other things you're oblivious to as a kid. Uh, but I think it still holds up. So there's my review, my analysis of this film. Uh, so I think I'll probably do another movie later this week. I think I might go back and re-review the Superman movie. Not 100% on that, but blessings and have a great week. In Jesus' name, amen.